Can you one-shot every boss in Dark Souls 2? No, and here's why. Fine, can you two-shot every boss in Dark Souls 2? No, and here's why. Sorry for the spoilers, but this is genuinely the hardest challenge I've ever done in a video game, and I feel like I came out the other end a worse person for my troubles. The only reason I'm here is because Lemon, aka the Backlogs, is having another contest and needs me to make it more interesting. He knows that while other contestants are out doing boring things like starting a family and being happy, I'll be here studying Dark Souls 2 minutiae until I'm too numb to notice how far my mind has slipped. I'm gonna talk about the rules now. To make it brief, the winner of this contest is decided by a point scoring system. Every boss and NPC in the game is considered a target, as well as a few select mini-bosses. When you neutralize a target in one attack, you earn 2 points, but if it takes 2 attacks, you only earn a single point. If you can't kill any more targets in 2 attacks or less and can no longer make progress, it's game over. Also, glitches and skips aren't allowed. There are more rules and technicalities, but I'll talk about them as they become relevant. So with that, we start off our run with the most literally me character I've made yet, and get to work killing. And by killing, I mean doing the thing everyone does at the start of every Dark Souls 2 playthrough, because if an enemy dies from environmental damage without us attacking them, it counts as a 0-hit kill, which is worth 2 points. Also, there isn't a level cap, so we're free to do a little mining off camera and max out all stats except vitality. Just kidding, I did not grind these levels. Lemon said we can use cheat engines so he doesn't receive terabytes of footage on a suspicious disk in the mail again. Smart choice. Some of you might expect this would make the challenge too easy. Wouldn't that be a wonderful fantasy world to live in? Another quality of life feature is that we can save scum instead of having to restart the entire run when we mess up or RNG doesn't go our way, which makes it viable to trade 2 petrified somethings at this nest here for 2 demon great hammers. You can trade any prism stone for them too, but the petrified somethings give higher odds. While we're at it, we gallop around Drangleic, gathering whatever we can that doesn't require us to beat any more bosses, then make our way into Huntsman's Copse for the next incredibly easy boss fight, the Skeleton Lords. You'd think that massive gank bosses like this could have the potential to be the hardest in the run, but sadly this isn't a 4 Kings situation like we had in Dark Souls 1. Before these 3 Skeleton Lords are defeated, the rest of the skeletons don't even spawn in, and while it is still possible to end this fight in 2 attacks, that's not the case for some of the other swarm fights, so the blanket ruling was that every individual enemy in the arena tied to a boss health bar had to be one shot for the whole fight to count as 2 points. This also goes for bosses with multiple health bars. This does make the fight incredibly easy, but I don't mind freebies like this considering the glimpse of hell that's coming up shortly. So you know how I mentioned we're allowed to use cheat engine to skip grinding? Well, Lemon requested that we still grind out at least 1 of each item before spawning it in so he can show it as proof that we have infinite access to it. I wanted to collect all the rare drops and upgrade stones I could from Dinah and Tilla's nest, and to do that I needed to prove I had access to smooth and silky stones, which drop at a 5% rate from these giants in Harvest Valley. 5% is apparently a lot lower than you'd think because I abused save scumming to keep spawning myself next to the low health giants, and it still took about an hour and a half to get 1. And yeah, I sure bet Lemon is gonna include footage of me picking up this dumb little rock in his video. Fuck off. After picking up a few last items and upgrading our weapons, it's time to meet the first boss of the run, which demands any semblance of intellectual acuity to beat, and his name is the Last Giant. He's 10 meters tall, single, and looking for a beautiful giant lady to repopulate his species with. When I did a dry run of this fight, I noticed I was not doing nearly enough damage to the last giant to land a one-shot on it, which had initially been the plan here. This understandably made me convulse and froth at the mouth, as I had spent about a month routing this run beforehand, only to get hard stuck at the first obstacle, and I don't take failure very well. It looked like we'd need to use a bright bug here to buff our damage, which would be really bad as we only get 3 of those until we acquire a Lord Soul, so they need to be rationed carefully. And as I was wondering where the hell I could have gone wrong in my planning, my eyes wandered over to the top left corner of my screen and I realized I was in the Champions Covenant, which makes enemies respawn infinitely but also makes them stronger. Yes, I recall the comments on my other Dark Souls 2 video, and no, the irony of this is not lost on me. So now that I've left the Champions Covenant, burned a bonfire ascetic in Majula, and bought the butterfly set, let's you and I have a bit of boy talk. If you're a girl, you get to skip this part. We could, in theory, take the 2-shot on the last giant and call it good, but we can easily do better than that. For this kill, I'll be power stancing fully upgraded Demon Great Hammers. Power stancing basically lets us wield 2 compatible weapons in either hand and swing both at once with a single input, therefore being defined as 1 attack. I have equipped the red Tearstone ring, which is the only damage boosting ring we currently have access to. In addition, we can buff both of our weapons. Casting Resonant Weapon on the left hand is a no-brainer since it's the strongest buffing spell in the game, and the right hand weapon has to be buffed with a resin consumable. The one I chose here was the Rotten Pine Resin due to a little peculiarity in this challenge's rule set. There's a whole section written out about status conditions such as poison and toxic, and I'm gonna summarize it as best I can. Casting a spell like Poison Mist will inflict poison buildup on an enemy, but is not counted as an attack until it reaches 100% and actually starts ticking away at their health. So we can cast this spell as many times as we want, and when we're ready to inflict poison, we can proc the poison simultaneously with another attack. Any attack that procs a status effect counts both the initial damage and subsequent poison damage as one single attack as far as the rules are concerned. To achieve the desired result, we put on the butterfly set and start edging the poison value. Hey, welcome back Zoomers, you spaced out for a minute there. When it's time, we use the hammers for the final hit. I should also say, for full disclosure, I am looking at the status buildup percentages in Cheat Engine. It does remove the difficulty that comes with trial and error, but at the same time it clears up any ambiguity for me as to whether I was inflicting poison with the hammer swing or the butterfly set, which is very important to know as mistiming it could lead to me losing a point or being disqualified. You're not allowed to see it though, fuck you. Even though I screwed up and Resonant Weapon wore off, we still take the swing anyways and observe what happens. Thankfully, the poison procs, and now all that's left is to see whether it does enough damage to finish off the last giant. Which it does... it does. The last giant down, we obtain the Soldier's Key, unlocking access to the Pursuer next. The Pursuer is also susceptible to poison, but this time the margin for error is much slimmer. Same strat, except we use Great Magic Weapon instead of Resonant Weapon due to the Pursuer's dark resistances. Sunlight Blade would be ideal, but isn't unlocked until much later. I was hoping and coping that the Pursuer would be possible to one-shot without the Bright Bug, and maybe it is, but not with our current build. I looked ahead and decided it was probably safe to just suck it up and pop an singular bug, so I did. Aside from that, the Pursuer isn't super difficult or anything. There's plenty of time to cast Poison Mist as he spawns in, and we can sneak in Whisper of Despair and buff our weapon without dying. And once the poison is built up enough, it's time for the hammers to drop. Making the Pursuer a priority target in this run benefits us twofold. First, we get the Ring of Blades, a flat damage increase to all our physical attacks. Second, we get access to infusions at the superior blacksmith, Dementia Dylan. Weapon infusions are great because you can still buff infused weapons with spells in this game, but not with resins. And the damage buff is often a flat attack rating buff in addition to a percentage of the weapon's existing damage for that element. And I was really hoping this extra damage would matter against our next target, but unfortunately, it did not. Our next target is Ornstein from Dark Souls 1, except he went to the cathedral that makes you old. On the way over, we do his job for him and slay the Guardian Dragon out front in one hit. This was worth 2 points, and I gotta say that when it came to mini-bosses, the rules were kinda all over the place and inconsistent as hell. So if you ever feel like asking, why is this mini-boss worth points but this one isn't? I don't know. I don't fucking know, okay? Tragedy strikes against the old Dragon Slayer once again as we're just barely cucked out of a Bright Bug free victory. There is another way we could have done enough damage, but it would have been kinda hard, and again, I looked ahead and decided this was probably fine. Same song and dance as before. Build up poison, buff, attack, run away. Another 2 points rightfully earned. The old Dragon Slayer drops the old Leo ring from his old corpse. I remember the good old days when it was just called the Leo ring. Oh no, they made me old too. Outside the boss arena, we purchase the Heavenly Thunder Miracle and make our way towards the shit-covered gutter. Since we're down to our last Bright Bug, I figured it'd be a good idea to take out a great one so we can buy some more. So we grab the Grand Lance, burn a Bonfire Ascetic, grab another Grand Lance, and don our best Mega Beedrill cosplay as we move on to battle the Rotten. The Rotten has a somewhat intimidating looking number, but fortunately I have a plan to win. I will have to make a concession here though. I don't think we can one-shot the Rotten even if we came back way later in the game, bar an unhealthy amount of luck, which I'll discuss later. Despite being a walking mound of corpses, the Rotten still succumbs to the stink. So things are business as usual for us. The Rotten is also super weak to getting stabbed really hard. That's not the whole story though. There's a mechanic in Dark Souls 2 called counter damage, which is a percentage modifier inflicted if you land an attack while an enemy is in its own attack animation. For the Grand Lances, this modifier is... holy shit. And when you factor in 20 flat damage from the Ring of Blades, 12.5% counter damage from the Old Leo Ring, 20% from the Red Tearstone Ring, 20% from Brightbug, and whatever the fuck Whisper of Despair does, we can land some crazy damage numbers. With a lightning-infused lance in our left hand buffed by Resonant Weapon and an uninfused lance in our right for inflicting poison, we're able to clear the halfway mark of the Rotten's health bar just barely enough that we don't need a Brightbug for the second hit, which is nice because its 2-minute duration usually expires after the first proc. I wouldn't say it was super difficult to get the 2-shot here since the boss is so slow, but this was definitely the hardest fight so far. After about 40 minutes of attempts, we finally land a good hit, and with a bit of patience, seal his fate with another. Maybe it's a bit telling that as I'm writing this, I'm reflecting on these early game kills as if they were the good old days back when things were simple. It's been downhill from the start, and it'll continue to be downhill from here. Before that though, we do get a bit of a break. We visit Dark Diver Grandal in 3 different locations, dive into all his deep, dark holes, then turn his geriatric ass into paste. This is 2 points, yes, but more importantly, we get the Dragon Chime, which is the strongest miracle chime in the game, and aren't locked out of the Dark Lurker boss since we lit all the torches in all of Grandal's locations. We pick up the miracle boosting Disc Chime, Channeler's Trident, Lightning Clutch Ring, Sun Ring, and Flynn's Ring. The Flynn's Ring is the reason we kept our vitality so low since it gives a flat 50 attack rating bonus to weapons when your max equip load is below 60. After upgrading and infusing the Dragon Chime with Lightning, we're all set to fight our next target, Scorpioness Najka. Sorry, wrong footage, honest mistake. Najka has 5,741 HP according to Wikidot, except that's not correct at all. Fandom says it's 5,911 HP, except that's wrong too. Her actual health is 5,910, which makes it even more embarrassing that Fextra Life copied Fandom's homework. And you know what? Fuck it, now's as good a time as any for this rant. It may seem like I'm splitting hairs here because who gives a shit about a single hit point, but this is just the tip of the iceberg. All 3 major wikis seem to be nothing more than a hotspot for the community to write whatever fanfiction they want about the game, and it was really starting to piss me off at this point. So please take my hand as I drag you kicking and screaming into the murky depths of Dark Souls 2 misinformation. To illustrate my thesis, let's look at an item that's extremely relevant to our situation right now, the Channeler's Trident. My plan for Najka is to 2-shot her with Heavenly Thunder, which can hit up to 4 times per cast, but currently we don't do enough damage to land a 2-shot even if all 8 bolts connect. On the Fandom Wiki, it mentions its 2-handed R2 gives an attack boosting buff that lasts 20 seconds. Not wrong, but it doesn't tell me anything about the potency of the buff or what types of attacks it boosts, so I check Wikidot next. It's allegedly not 20 seconds, but rather 15, and a 25% damage boost,
which is a pretty substantial amount of firepower to be missing out on. But oh, what's that? It doesn't affect miracles? That's a shame. Then the video linked shows the dance clearly giving a 5% buff, not 25%.
So I checked the Extra Life Wiki, and they've copied Wikidot's homework this time, except did a bit more testing. I don't know if you could hear the air quotes, but to sum it up, it's allegedly a 25%
And the frustratingly simple answer to all this at the end of the day is that it's a 5% boost to all outgoing damage from the player for 20 seconds. I know this because instead of just using my intuition, I used my eyes as well. Also, that's a fucking pathetic buff, so suffice to say if at any point throughout this video I present information which conflicts with anything written online, it should be assumed that I did more research and therefore I am correct. Which is an absurd thing to hear from a guy who has deliberately left misinformation in his videos to bait engagement, yet somehow these midwits screwed up so bad, they taught me the value of integrity. Anyways, we do our little pole dance and Najka dies in like 5 seconds. It was really fucking easy. Killing Najka at this point is important because, well, it's gonna be important soon, I guess. Next, we have another free and easy boss in the Prowling Magus and Congregation. Each enemy in the room perishes after a single hit. I wish I could say the same about our next target, but it's time for the revenge of the Covetous Demon. In my previous Dark Souls 2 video, I said that the Covetous Demon is one of the Dark Souls 2 bosses of all time. I still agree with that, but what I didn't mention is that Covetous Demon is one of the most Dark Souls 2 bosses of all time. This holds true even in this challenge. He is poisonable, but it takes forever due to his high resistance. What's more, with the tools we have access to, we have to use the Trident to secure the kill. If we don't, he's left alive with a double-digit amount of HP. Thankfully, his attacks are easy enough that all this seems plausible, but conversely, his attacks are just Dark Souls 2 enough that shit like this happens.
Oh my god, this fucking game is so bad, man. This game is so fucking bad.
It is extremely difficult. More difficult than I thought Covetous Demon ever could be. Maybe it sounds like I'm exaggerating. I mean, how hard could it be to get a 2-shot on the Covetous Demon? Fair enough. Perhaps now would be a good time to reveal that this kill is not a 2-shot. I did it! Now we've reached the fun part of the run. With this world liberated from the Covetous Demon, we tell Kraton that Pate was talking shit and didn't think that he would hear it. He heard him talking like that, getting everybody fired up. While we do get 2 points for killing Pate, Kraton is another matter. He'll disappear if we reload the area, and he's already missing some health, so if we attack him now, we'll only get 1 point. But it's a few times I've been around that track, so it's not just gonna happen like that. We use guard breaks to gently guide Kraton outside the building, where he is then shot to death before our very eyes. That's right, I'm the last one standing and another one bites the dust. Since all his health drained to environmental damage, this is a 0-hit kill and therefore worth 2 points. Now we have the key to unlock the Engraved Gauntlets. The Engraved Gauntlets apparently grant a 5% chance to deal an extra 50% damage with any attack. The Engraved Gauntlets are a blight. As a matter of principle, when it came to planning fights, I considered it an objective failure on my part if any target required a crit in order to get the 2-shot. However, if I can, in theory, cheese out an easy 1-shot thanks to a crit, there's a good chance I'm gonna take it. It doesn't appear as though the gauntlets will help with our next target, the Duke's Dear Freja, who has 4,220 health and is immune to poison. I'm not 100% sure whether a 1-shot would be possible if we came back later, but we're getting a bit low on our Bright Bug supply and need to take out another great one in order to buy more. With our current equipment, we're just barely able to land a 2-shot without having to use a Bright Bug, and also 1-shot Duke Seldora right afterwards. I also kinda gave up on the 1-shot when it came to the Royal Rat Authority. It has more health than Freja, but is susceptible to poison. In my testing, I found it was possible to do with my current setup, but unfortunately I had to do the whole poison buildup, then pray for a crit, specifically on my left-handed lance to do enough damage for a 1-shot. So I said screw that and took a free 2-shot without using a Bright Bug, but did keep a backup save here in case I completed the run and wanted to come back and optimize later. Spoilers, I never ended up doing that, and you'll see why by the end of the video. Just because we can, we take a trip to No Man's Wharf and flex on the Flexile Sentry. Not only do we get a 1-shot here, but it doesn't even require a Bright Bug to do so. You may be asking why I chose to take a 2-shot on the Royal Rat Authority when I probably could have come back later and 1-shot it. By trading in its boss soul, we get access to a certain spell that is infamous for doing sweet jack shit in any PvE scenario. Those of you that watch my 1-shot run of Dark Souls might be flabbergasted to discover that this is the second time a seemingly useless pyromancy that ends in the word surge ends up allowing us to 1-shot what otherwise seems like an impossible target. So among other Dark Souls 2 slander is the bit of disinformation that Acid Surge has no effect on bosses and only works on NPCs or other players. The reality that I live in, however, is that Acid Surge is the best debuff spell in the whole fucking game. While it doesn't work on the overwhelming majority of bosses, it does work against Mytha, which is very important because she has 3,570 HP and a poison immunity, which, under normal circumstances, is just barely enough to defeat any hope of one-shotting her. However, if we cast a couple clouds of Acid Surge, we hear a peculiar noise and see a particle effect. This means Acid Surge has taken effect, and she now takes 5% more damage from all attacks for 60 seconds. I think. I don't really care to check. 5% is not that significant, but what if we did it again? And 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 again? Holy shit. Now this may seem broken as hell, but keep in mind that all the debuffs have to be applied within 60 seconds before the first one wears off for the most damage. This turns the fight into a DPS check to see how many clouds we can cast in a short amount of time, then a luck check to see if the boss will give us an opening for a counter hit right after. Mytha took about 2 hours of attempts, and the worst part is that at the end of the day, I can't even tell whether the acid surges mattered, or if we just got a lucky engraved gauntlet crit. Plus, this discovery ends up not being super useful since there's probably a single-digit amount of bosses this even works on. So yeah, say goodbye to acid surge for a while. I haven't really explained my routing here, but there was a good reason things were done this way. Or at least an acceptable one. I tried to choose a path that gets me the one-shot on Mytha and as many other targets as possible along the way. With the hindsight I have now, I would have approached this ever so slightly differently, but it is what it is. Mytha's Soul gets us a particularly unique boss weapon, as it has the distinct potential to not only inflict poison with its attacks, but also apply toxic buildup, which is just a more potent poison with a separate buildup. The only downside being that we now need a way to stack toxic as well. Fortunately, I've just shit my pants. And Based Lemon has officially ruled that flinging handfuls of feces at people is not an assault, but rather a means by which one expresses themselves in a social context. Therefore, it is my prerogative to cover my enemies in as much brown sludge as I can before stabbing them and watching them die a horrid, painful death. Though as intoxicating as it is to slay my foes using the poo-poo, it does require a certain degree of elegance and precision to get just right, which is why you will respect what I am doing to the Smelter Demon right now as a form of art. First, we have to build up poison and toxic without triggering either. Then, for a bit of extra damage, we can power stance Mytha's blade with the Grand Lance and swing them both at the same time. The poison and toxic combined deal approximately this much damage on top of whatever our weapons do with the initial hit. With this strat, we are able to two-shot the Smelter Demon without using a Bright Bug, but again, the timing takes a ton of practice and a bit of luck to get right. Defeating the Smelter Demon gives us another item on our radar, an upgraded version of the Ring of Blades, which adds 35 attack rating compared to our previous one's 20. Flat AR buffs are deceptively strong since they're factored in before all the multipliers, and we need all the help we can get. Speaking of taking every bit of help we can get, we make our way up to Belfry Soul and save scum this phantom until it drops a rare mask that gives a 3% boost to all magic damage. Well, would you look at that, there's a lever here that rings some kind of bell. And this is where I would do the usual plug, but before I do, I want you to scroll down just below the video where it shows the stats and look carefully. Ready? Here goes. Make sure you like this video and click the subscribe button. Did it work? I've seen those buttons light up before on other videos, let me know if you saw it. Anyways, that break was just enough time for me to save scum for the Black Witch Domino Mask, and now we go on our merry way to take out the old Iron King. We use the same Mytha's Blade strat as the Smelter Demon to two-shot it and save a Bright Bug yet again. The reason we took out the old Iron King is to access the DLC area behind him and farm a specific enemy for the blue dagger. This dagger isn't good as a weapon, but can be held in our offhand to boost all our magic damage by 5%. There's exactly one instance where this buff actually changed anything in my run. With this, I decide it's time to make some progress through the main game. We head to Drangleic Castle to take out the Dragon Rider duo. Mytha's Blade strat, one shot, I'm not going to talk about it because it's boring. The Looking Glass Knight, however, caused a bit of a headache. With 6,540 HP, it's looking to be our toughest challenge yet. Pair that with an annoying shield that steals your hits if your aim isn't perfect, and you've got one of the most frustrating enemies to try and two-shot. I initially went for the classic Mytha's Blade strat, but building up Toxic and Poison and then trying to land a perfect counter hit without dying twice in a row proved way too challenging, and after about 40 minutes of attempts, I realized I needed to switch it up or I was gonna go insane. Dude, I just can't catch a fucking break, man. He is weak to strike damage, so it ends up being much easier to power stance Great Hammers instead. This way we don't have to worry about landing counter damage or building up Toxic, so we get the first hit and it barely does over half his health. But when we go for the second hit... yeah. I'm such a winner. I'm so good at video games. I think I checked the health after landing the first hit, and this setup would fail if it did like 12 less damage. Straight after we challenged the Demon of Song, who has a similarly massive health pool but no strike weakness. I accidentally activated the indefinite bright bug glitch here by creating a backup save after entering the boss arena, and I didn't realize until later. Not that the damage buff affected anything, but I thought it would be fun to put Lemon on the spot here.
I mean, what's he gonna do? Disqualify me?
Going into this next boss, I'd like to say a few words about specifically Ray Dimitri and Inferno Plus, because I know I'll get some really annoying comments from people who watched their videos years ago, but didn't pay attention to the rules of this challenge. First of all, if you see a chime or staff with a buff applied to it, that's a glitch. Not allowed. If you see the red Tearstone buff while they're casting spells, the ring only affects physical damage now. They're playing on an old version of the game. Not allowed. If you see them cast 12 Lingering Flames and wait for the boss to walk into the minefield, that is not a one-shot, that is a 12-shot. That said, meet Velstadt. His numbers may not seem intimidating at first glance, but when he transitions into Phase 2, he gains a permanent 40% damage mitigation to all incoming attacks. He is susceptible to poison, but it would still be nice to have a bit of help from Acid Surge, baby! Yeah, it's the best spell in the game, baby! Let me splurge on some Acid Surge, you know what I'm saying? In a pleasant twist, Velstadt is affected by Acid Surge. That's right, this potentially run-ending threat is conveniently subverted by this spell that, as far as you or anyone else watching this video knows, doesn't actually do what I claim it does. Interestingly, there is a way to check which enemies Acid Surge works on, and trust me, it is not what you'd think it is. I'll cover all that later though. It's not like we even needed Acid Surge here, it just made the fight a bit easier to the point that we didn't have to worry about every possible buff when landing our hits. Our first hit is done with Great Hammers to drop him well below half health, since it's much easier to land a good hit with the Great Hammers than a Toxic proc and counter hit with the Lance. However, in the second phase, we swap out our weapons to do exactly that, since the status damage we inflict is more valuable than the initial hit.
Come on, yes!
Fuck you, Ray Dimitri. It's always been personal. With Velstadt dead, we've unlocked some pretty significant power boosts on both the physical and magical spectrum. For physical, we have the Sacred Oath spell, which adds a flat 50 AR. Not good on its own, but again, this is factored in before multipliers. For magic, we have Soul Geyser, which is the strongest spell we have access to, for now. The last boss that stands in the way of ultimate power in this run is the Guardian Dragon at Aldia's Keep. With its health pool, it should prove to be one of the easier bosses to two-shot, so I give it a test run with Mytha's Blade, and yeah, that seems manageable. But an intrusive thought creeps into my mind. Could we maybe somehow do just barely enough damage with crits so that Toxic kills? What if we tried with Great Hammers instead? Then something happened to me that sent me into the kind of downward spiral one only feels when realizing everything they've ever achieved was built on a foundation of lies.
It's a weak spot. The head's the weak spot. No.
The Guardian Dragon, from my estimates, takes about 50% more damage when its head is attacked compared to its legs. Nowhere on any wiki can I find any mention of this, and suddenly I'm left wondering whether every single boss in the game might have a weak point like this. I desperately searched the internet for answers. I browsed the Dark Souls modding Discord, I checked the parameters of the Guardian Dragon, and inspect its model in DS Map Studio to find some clue that might suggest its head would take more damage than the rest of it. I can't find a thing. Not that it isn't there, I just don't know how to find it. To make matters worse, another contestant mentioned that they might have hit some kind of weak spot when fighting the Lost Sinner, so who knows what other targets this might be relevant against. I'm not going to go back and check, but just know that from this point on, I do test the head or any obvious weak points I see for every boss in the game. After some testing, we're able to find a Great Hammer combination that outputs enough damage to land a one-shot, but only if one of the hammers crits. So I try this a few times, but the dragon's behavior starts to piss me off a bit, so instead I give Soul Geyser a go. We have access to the magic clutch ring and kill a mimic to pick up the strongest sorcery staff in the game. So we do our silly little dance ritual, enter the arena, and that was honestly way closer than expected. So we run it back, but hope to get luckier this time, resulting in perhaps the first satisfying kill of the run.
Holy Fuck, that was satisfying.
With the Guardian Dragon down, we're finally able to awaken to our latent dragon powers. With everything Dark Souls 2 has taken from us, and trust me, it has taken so much more than you probably realize, we are at least thrown one singular Dragon Torso Stone shaped bone. The Dragon Torso Stone's roar now buffs all outgoing damage as opposed to just physical hits. By how much, you ask? 15% for about 5 seconds. 15% isn't bad by this game's standards, but the amount of buffs and debuffs on the checklist has been unreasonable ever since we picked up the Trident, and it just keeps getting worse. Since I mentioned the Lost Sinner earlier, I guess we can do one of those real quick. It's not flashy though, and you've definitely seen it before. Hey guys, did you know Acid Surge works on the Lost Sinner too? Oh wow, isn't that cool? We take a moment to acquire the Unleash magic spell, which is effectively a replenishable replacement for the Bright Bug with the caveat that it only buffs magic. We're supposed to do a bunch of murder to complete the quest for this spell, but we can acquire all the key items we need without any bloodshed. Except for Cartographer Kale, he defo got his skull caved in. Speaking of caves and being in them, there's this chasm that makes you dark, and you have to lurk in it. Look, I'm trying here. The Dark Lurker is our next target, and was initially the strategic centerpiece upon which this run focused on when I started routing. Killing Dark Lurker grants access to Climax, which is easily the highest damaging attack in the game, though as the route became more fleshed out, I started to realize Climax wasn't necessary for a lot of targets, and actually has surprisingly few use cases where it helps beat an otherwise difficult boss. With our super cool dragon powers and the ability to shoot several soul spears at a time, you'd think the Dark Lurker wouldn't cause too much of an issue, but oh boy, you'd be right. Wait, what? No, I'm not kidding. This was genuinely the second attempt. I didn't even have a plan yet, I was just winging it. As is par for the course, I reached Climax much earlier than expected, but what does this mean for the rest of the run? For our next hurdle, we try climaxing on the Throne Watcher and Defender. It works for the Watcher, but the Defender just barely edges us and denies our win. We could easily fish for a crit here, but I'd like to save stuff like that for when I've exhausted all other options. Luckily, we have that Pyromancy from earlier whose effect I completely made up. Like I actually just straight up lied about it, and you all believed me. That aside, I guess the Throne Defender decides to take more damage from Climax this time for some reason, and then we clean up the Watcher shortly after. Since we one-shot them both, we've earned another 2 points. Nishandra won't come out to play until we have the Giants' kinship, so we revisit the good old days where men were men and giants were lords, and everyone was just killing each other all the time. With the Giant Lord's health pool, it's more than reasonable to get the 2-shot, while a 1-shot seems to be a bit of a reach. But my mama raised a critter, not a quitter, and in only a few short attempts the Giant Lord's legacy is sprayed across the castle ramparts. We're now able to burn a bonfire ascetic at the Giant Lord's bonfire to reset all the memories, so we quickly snipe Captain Drummond and do exactly that in order to acquire a second Giant Warrior Club. I don't think I actually kill any bosses by power stancing these clubs because they put us over the 120% weight threshold, and I didn't want to give up the Flimsring boost. I think sandbagging Flimsring just a little bit would have been optimal, but to be completely honest, that idea didn't even cross my mind at the time. At this point, we're entering the first cleanup phase of the run with a few easy bosses to deal with before we start the real challenge. Hope you're ready for a massacre. The ruined sentinels invite me to their foursome, but little do they know I've already had mine. The bellkeeper gets his bell rung in more ways than one, and we bell free these gargoyles from being alive. The Royal Rat Vanguard realizes that trying to cross into my homeland was the last mistake they would ever make. The Grave Robber Trio become just the Grave Trio after I pulverize their spines, because they're dead now. We knock the Executioner off his high horse and, okay, this one needs a bit of explaining actually. There are 2 ways to defeat the Executioner's chariot. One way is to drop the gate on him, then kill the horse, and the other is to deal enough damage as he circles around the arena to where the horse fails to jump the gap, letting us hit him once more to finish the fight. Dropping the gate inflicts damage which automatically disqualifies a 1-shot, but on the other hand, it's impossible to end this fight in one hit the other way as well, since the boss will never drop below 1 health until we attack him on the ledge directly. However, Lemon ruled that if we can prove we did enough damage to land a kill and it still hangs on with 1 hit point, it'll be counted as a 1-shot anyways. So I did that by casting Poison Mist as it circled around, then I activated the following buffs in the following order: Sunlight Blade, Sacred Oath, Brightbug, a Whisper of Despair, Red Tearstone Ring,
Yes, I am saying them all to emphasize the point.
Rotten Pine Resin, and finally, the Dragon Torso Roar. I've listed all of these because I don't think I've yet illustrated the insane hoops you have to jump through to optimize damage output in this game. Thankfully, attacking the chariot here always seems to land counter damage, letting it slowly bleed the rest of its health as it sits over the ledge. Sadly, the poison does not finish it off. I really wish it did. It's still worth 2 points though, so I guess you could say this fight is a bit of an edge case. Wait, shit, they already made that joke. With that cleanup done, we've reached the point where it's looking pretty unlikely that we'll be two-shotting any more bosses in the remaining time. So with only a couple days left, I evaluate the remaining targets and see which of them seems the most viable to dedicate my time to. Since basically every other option seemed hopeless, I decided to set my sights on Nishandra. If I run out of time, I want to at least be able to say that I beat the game. This obviously means I've given up on Aldia, but let's be real, there's no way we were ever beating Vendrick or the Ancient Dragon anyways. People might insist that a two-shot of Nishandra is extremely hard, but they just aren't being creative enough. There's this bit of elevated ground on the side of the arena we can walk on and bait her over to. Plunging attacks are pretty terrible in this game since they're hard to control and require a fair bit more height compared to Dark Souls 1, though at a height like this, a jump attack can actually hit twice. I don't think I need to explain it more than that, and it's my job to make this stuff look easy, so... Okay, that was so fucking easy. I'm, like, pissed off how easy that was. That's all she wrote, I suppose. We make our way to the throne and the credits roll. Against all odds, we've managed to two-shot our way through the entirety of Dark Souls 2, Scholar of the First Sin. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you when I upload again in about 4 months. Wait, something's not right here. Maybe you felt it too? I never started this journey anticipating a perfect ending, yet somehow, even with that expectation in mind, this outcome feels incomplete. I don't want to accept this resolution, not when there's still more we can do. After all, what is a king without his crown?
Poor Arthur. Do you miss your king? One without the sire has arrived. Do be merciful, and end things swiftly.
Ava, the King's Pet, the only barrier between us and Regicide. It has a weakness to pierce, and that weakness led me to find exactly one method to do enough damage to take out its titanic health bar in just 2 attacks. It's surprisingly simple. All it takes is the patience of a saint, surgically precise timing, and a shit ton of luck. We're not fishing for crits here, though I wouldn't mind if the game decided to throw one my way. And trust me, the choice of Fire Infusion and Resonant Weapon make for the highest possible damage with these weapons. Getting Toxic and Poison to proc simultaneously on Ava with a counter hit is already a pretty big ask, but when factoring in almost every other buff which I described in the chariot fight against an opponent that either won't stop riding your ass or won't approach for an entire minute, you've got a miserable slog with a median attempt length of around 10 minutes where, paradoxically, your undivided focus is required on 2 different screens for every last second of it. The one saving grace is that we have an excess of bright bugs, so wasting a couple here isn't a big deal. That's about the only positive thing I can think of to say about all this. When I started attempting Ava, I had barely over 30 hours remaining until the contest deadline, so I did the only thing I know how to do and locked the fuck in. Yeah, this game fucking blows. Okay, I drank there, but whatever. Fuck off, man. Oh, come on now. How did I do it the first time, man? What? Okay. I fucking hate this game. I'm gonna spoon my fucking eyes out. I think that worked. No, but
Fuck off. Like, get a fucking life. Okay. That's... Fuck, man, this is so fucking hard. Daddy's job makes him very angry, kids. I got one. Oh my god, I got one. Ah, come on, come on, come on, come on.
So, after taking a step back, I've realized, yeah, maybe I don't want to play Dark Souls 2 anymore. A bit of a letdown, I know, but look, I'm all gamered out, okay? Our final task before putting a neat little bow on this run is to kill every remaining non-boss target on the list. This calls for a specific selection of mini-bosses and every NPC in the game. There's not too much to talk about here since I kinda just say, it's climaxing time, and then I start climaxing all over everyone, and I'm not gonna play up the emotional impact of having to kill any of these characters because this is Dark Souls 2 and nobody gives a shit about Crumston of Linsfall or Scrungles the Meek. There is one group of NPCs worth talking about actually, those being the 4 Milfanitos. Yeah, I get it, the first 4 letters real funny, grow up! I'm not really sure how these NPCs work, but simply killing the first 3 seemed to lock us out of killing the 4th, so instead we kill the one in Drangleic Castle, kill the one in front of the Demon of Song, use a bonfire ascetic to respawn it since this one in particular counts as an enemy for some reason, then talk to her to free her, which unlocks this door and lets us access the 4th and final Milfanito. The only non-boss points we can't get here are Alsana the Oracle and 2 Mimics and Frozen Elium Lois, all of which are locked behind Ava, hence my desperation to beat it. This is where I planned for the story to conclude, but it was the morning of the final day and I mentioned not being able to beat Ava in the Discord, to which I got this response. Well, that settles it. If other people think I can 2-shot Ava, then I can. It's that simple. We've still got an entire 18 hours left, so if I start eating spoonfuls of pixie dust now, maybe I can shit out a miracle by sunset. So we get to it, racking up several hours of attempts and losses where I very rarely even managed to land a single attack. Then it finally happened. The God Run. My play was flawless, the AI was generous, and after so much trial and error, I finally managed to take down Ava in just 2 attacks. And right as the excitement of this win began to simmer down, I looked over at my other screen and noticed that I wasn't recording. I had the strangest reaction to this. I said out loud, "That's kinda funny," then chuckled to myself for a good 10 seconds before loading a backup save, hitting the record button, pretending to be really mad about it, and continuing the attempts as though nothing had happened.
That actually kind of hurts. It hurts in a way that hasn't fully settled on me yet. Like, I don't really feel anything. In my head, I'm like, okay, well, I just did it. I can do it again.
To my credit, I got pretty close to winning again a couple of times.
Okay. I think that was it. I think that was a good hit. It's fucking terrifying, man. Oh! It's not fair. It's not fair. It's not fair. It's not fair. Did I do it? I think I did it. I'm so afraid right now. Ugh, fuck, whatever. Oh my god. Oh my god, I think that was it. Oh my god. I'm recording this time, right? Oh, thank fuck. Oh. Oh. I think I want to kill myself.
The feeling I got upon victory is comparable to losing your life savings at the casino and eventually leaving after earning back about half of it. But hey, look on the bright side, we just earned 5 more points. And we're not done yet. If we can defeat Ava, then the Burnt Ivory King should be feasible too, right? So we free a couple knights to help seal off the portals in this MMO raid boss arena so we can fight the Ivory King one-on-one. I pretty much assumed that having a 4th knight 1v1 it while we provided support wouldn't be allowed, and even if it was, I still would have tried the fight both ways. The Ivory King may not be weak to pierce like Ava was, but he has similar defense and less health, so the same strat should be viable. So we give the old toxic strat a try. Keep in mind that the lead up to this boss lasts 4 minutes each time we want to attempt him, and we can't speedrun it since we don't want our knights dealing damage to him. Within a couple dry runs, I took notice of the flaws in my plan. The Ivory King has the same crazy high poison resistance, but offers even fewer safe windows, and is a much harder target to nail with a big blob of shit. The more this realization sunk in, the more I could feel a pit growing inside me, followed by random bouts of nausea, and I figured I can probably come up with a strat that doesn't literally harm me in real life. This meant it was completely back to the drawing board. I put basically every weapon in the game up for consideration here. Anything with a big damage number, a bunch of counter damage, a special attack, unique power stance movesets, or anything that was even a little weird, and trust me, there are a lot of weapons that fit that final descriptor. Eventually, I found one that fell into several of the aforementioned categories: the Warped Sword. It has a power stance attack that lets us hit twice with each weapon. Usually for attacks like this, each individual hit is weakened to compensate, but for the Warped Sword, the damage seemed comparable to landing 4 regular attacks. So I looked for a weapon to pair it with, and the obvious answers seemed to be the Ice Rapier. It has a similar attack rating to the Warped Sword, but higher counter damage, which can be boosted by the Leo Ring, since despite the power stance attack's animation, the Rapier is still dealing thrust damage. Through my testing, I noticed something peculiar. No matter which weapon it was paired with, no matter which hand it was wielded in, the Warped Sword always seemed to be outperforming its partner weapon. So on a whim, I decided to test what would happen with 2 Warped Swords, and holy shit, I can hardly believe what I'm seeing. There is nothing I could find that would suggest the Warped Sword should be doing more damage than other weapons here, so I say this from the bottom of my heart. Fuck Dark Souls 2. This fragment of enlightenment was exactly what I needed to keep persevering at a time like this. That doesn't mean this will be easy though. It'll still require a perfectly timed counter hit that procs poison alongside almost every other buff we have available. Honestly though, it all feels like child's play compared to what we've already been through. The Burnt Ivory King could cut me down as many times as he wanted, but I would keep coming back, biding what precious little time I have left and waiting for an opening. Sooner or later, he'll leave himself vulnerable, and in that moment, his life and his crown will be claimed by the true king. Please let that be it. I didn't look. I don't think it's gonna be it, man. It's gonna be so close, but I don't think that's it. Oh. That guy can eat my shorts. The crown of the Ivory King is mine, and the last NPC we have to kill is Alsana. We face off against Lud and Zalin, but their combined health is slightly higher than Ava's, and I didn't really have time to mess around fishing for crits here, so we just take the 2-shot on each of them. And that's it. It's finally time to start tallying the score. Okay, but what if we did one more, though? Ilana, at first glance, may appear as impossible as they come due to her health pool being higher than any other boss we've beaten so far, and being immune to poison. But what if I told you she's not? And yes, it's fucking Acid Surge again, baby! Oh, I love Acid Surge so much! So earlier in the video, I promised to explain the secret of how to determine an enemy's susceptibility to Acid Surge, and what better time to reveal it than when everyone watching already assumes I've gone off the deep end. I barely believe it myself, but the number in question that dictates whether an enemy is affected by Acid Surge is their curse resistance. No, by the way, Acid Surge does not build up the curse status on enemies. Explanation aside, is it actually possible to beat Ilana with the help of the Acid Surge debuff? Outside the arena, we buff with Sacred Oath, Brightbug, and Crystal Magic Weapon. Then enter the room, cast Whisper of Despair, start casting Acid Surge and dodging where possible, being careful not to miss any clouds when Alana teleports. If we hit all 5 casts of Acid Surge, the debuff should activate 3 times, and all that's left is to buff with Aromatic Ooze, wait for a convenient opening, roar, and land a counter hit. It gets a bit hard to manage since the roar costs so much stamina and we need to wait a second so we don't land a weak hit. Fortunately, she gives us exactly the opening we need to chop her up into tiny little ribbons when she summons more enemies. Killing Alana is undoubtedly a crowning achievement in a run like this. I would wager none of the other contestants managed to do this, which makes this the perfect chance to end the run on a high note. Okay, but what if we did one more, though? Sin, the Slumbering Dragon, is our next target and has even more health and higher defense and is also immune to poison. But oh wow, would you look at that curse resistance? I tell you guys, this just might work. Sin really likes flying around, refusing to sit still for any Acid Surge clouds or any of our attacks. I did a bit of testing and we'd need to have Acid Surge proc 4 times, which is about 6 full clouds. Sounds easy enough to do in 60 seconds, if we're incredibly lucky. I do manage to get a couple god runs in there where Sin decides to take his ADHD meds, but those meds and the Acid Surge debuff both wear off before we can do our little dragon roar and land a proper hit. I go at this for a few hours and start to realize how hopeless it all is. More than half the time, Sacred Oath wears off before we can get all 4 debuff stacks, and no Fextra Life, Lingering Dragon Crest Ring does not extend Sacred Oath, you ass clowns. I tried a couple variations of this strategy, including applying buffs after Acid Surge, not using the Dragon Torso at all, etc., but in the end I figured I had to call it here. We got pretty far in this run already, and I'm proud of my overall performance here, but Sin is just not happening. Or so I thought at the time, but then, right as I was about to throw in the towel, no, I actually gave up, is what I planned to say when everything unexpectedly fell into place. Stop, that didn't happen, I seriously quit. And that's when I made a discovery that would change everything. No, I didn't, piss off. Finally, with a bit of patience and luck, we're able to beat the odds and land 2 decisive blows, putting Sin back in his eternal slumber. Is this what it's like to fail after giving it your all? It feels so good. I can vividly imagine a timeline where I had more chances to just keep fighting Sin over and over until I eventually won, but honestly, I'm okay with this, because in that universe, I'm probably even less happy, because then I would have also attempted Blue Smelter Demon and got hard stuck again. And if this footage of me literally chasing the dragon as it flies barely out of reach isn't an apt enough metaphor for this run, then I don't know what is. Which means it's finally time to tally up our total points for the run. Our final score out of a possible 200 points is...
You were close!
Keep in mind this is my personal tally, and Lemon's final score might disagree with mine when he releases his video in like a year. So look forward to that, and also look forward to my second channel where I'll be uploading videos more regularly with help from an editor. Go subscribe there if you want to support me, since it'll help me earn partner status faster. And don't worry, uploads there won't take away from the main channel. Not that you'd notice either way at my current pace. Special thanks to all the channel members that supported me over such a long content drought. Speaking of, it's time for another members only minigame. You don't have to be a member to watch, but if you want your name to compete in the next video, consider clicking the join button to become a member. The minigame will play out with no extra input required on your end, and there's a special prize for the winner. This time around, 2 teams will go head-to-head in a good old-fashioned bench brawl. Only the survivors of each battle will be chosen to move on to the next round. Each channel member has been given 2 weapons, a set of armor, and a ring at random. Any members wielding spellcasting catalysts have been given 2 spells for each type they can cast. Since we have 22 members, round 1 of the first bracket will be a 6v6 and round 2 will be a 5v5. Survivors will advance and compete in the following round until one single winner is declared. Here's everyone's names. I'd recommend picking one person to root for because it's gonna get really hard to keep track once everyone starts moving. As the referee for this match, the slaughter will begin as soon as I approach and give the signal.
Ready? Go!
Neither side hesitates in the initial clash, but it looks like red team has sustained slightly more damage. Already this asshole with the chime is going as far away from the action as possible, making my job as the cameraman even harder with the world's shittiest camera tool. You guys have no idea how hard this was to set up, by the way. Nobody knows shit when it comes to Dark Souls 2, and that goes double in the modding community. And Rachel from Red is the first one to go. Tough luck, but Jolt from Blue will make the afterlife a little less lonely. Don Coates casts Scraps of Life one more time before he becomes Scraps of Death, and Luft is shanked to death by Shattered Remnants. I've got to interfere as the ref here to make these two fight again. Meanwhile, it looks like Blue Team is wiping the floor with Red. And now it's a 4v1, and things aren't looking good for Rodrigones. Congratulations to these 4 Blue Team members for surviving round 1. Meet our fighters for Wave 2. Which one's your favorite? I like the one with the cool glowing mask. There's a lot of duplicate weapons across these NPCs because you can't give an NPC a normal weapon. It has to be a special NPC version of it for it to deal damage. So I had to substitute a lot of weapons for their nearest equivalent. Anyways, here's everyone's names. Pick a champion and let's fight.
Ready? Go!
Both sides sustain heavy damage in the first clash, and a couple of spells are even being shot into the mix. By the way, you may be thinking there's a visual bug with Pamphilof's weapon here, but it's actually the illusory ring of the Exalted making it invisible. But which weapon has that insane moveset? Leave your guess in the comments. Maylol is the first to go down, followed by Young Money Matt, but oh, watch out! Dropkick from the top rope! My god, you've never seen it like this before! Oh, and RIP Dragon Queen, I suppose. Josephi dies next, and suddenly it's just one lowly red against an entire casting couch of blues. I can't bear to watch. Congratulations to all members of Blue for surviving the second wave of Round 1. For Round 2, we have the survivors of both teams from Round 1 pitted against each other, except you may have noticed my self-insert OC. The teams weren't even, so you can think of this like when your teacher joins the losing side in your gym class's dodgeball game. Also, if you were wondering why some names are colored and others aren't, there are 3 tiers of channel memberships you can have. Also, it's a slight difference, but the Tier 3 members, in addition to having bisexual colored names, also have slightly shinier phantoms, since that was an option. Oh, what's that? The round is starting? Okay then.
Ready? Go!
I really don't like how this battle starts, if I'm being honest, because I know it's gonna earn me some hate after that sick fucking dropkick from last round, but unfortunately my son sorta duels Pamploaf alone in the corner away from all the other fighting, and yeah, they're the first one dead. Next one to go is Engineer, whose entire health bar gets deleted in like 3 seconds by a catastrophic wombo combo. It's looking like Blue is screwed here, but Trees of Bees hears one final Johnny Test whip crack sound effect before dying. Next to go is Ezzy, and I am so sorry my self-insert is fragging out right now. Sawyer Watts takes over 500 damage in a single hit, and Lucid Rook is the last to perish, leaving an awkward amount of players for the finale. For the final rounds, we're going to do a round-robin style where the first to win twice in a row will be deemed the winner. For the first battle of the finals, we have Shattered Remnants against J-Cells. For this round, I have affixed the camera to the one I predict to win. Let the battle begin.
Ready? Go!
My prediction is looking pretty good after the first couple seconds. By the way, J-Cells has the illusory ring of a conqueror, yet another invisibility ring. Shattered Remnants isn't giving any room to breathe. The attacks just keep coming too quickly and hit too hard. J-Cells getting a couple hits in, but doesn't seem to be enough. J-Cells is now 1 hit from death. Side note, I find it so vindicating that even the NPCs do this shit where their character doesn't turn around to face the enemy they're locked onto. They really fumbled the combat in this game, huh? With 1 finishing blow, Shattered Remnants is victorious, which means they'll be moving on to... Hey, what? Ow, stop! Help! Help! Welcome to what might be the final round of the tournament. If Shattered Remnants can win here, that'll be the end. If not, Naragash will have a chance at the crown. It all comes down to this, and yeah, sorry, I'm putting my money on Shattered again. No, I'm not just playing favorites because this one gave me more money. I would tell you very shamelessly if I was.
Ready? Go!
I have to respect the immediate parry attempt from Naragash, but unfortunately they're gonna get the shit stabbed out of them for that blunder. The range and speed on display here from the Spear and S-Stock is absolutely frightening, and Naragash is running out of room to make a comeback, but from the darkest corners of It's So Over, lies the brightest flame of we're so bad. Okay, never mind. Congratulations to Shattered Remnant for their victory, and oh no, not again! For their victory, Shattered Remnants will get their comment pinned on this video if they decide to make one. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time.